Hey there, this is Jenny Chen. I'm the founder of 3D Heals. Welcome to the Lattice podcast, the official podcast for 3D Heals. This is where you will find fun but in-depth conversations with technological game changers, creative minds, entrepreneurs, rule breakers, and more, focusing on how we can use 3D technologies like 3D printing and bioprinting to reinvent healthcare and even life sciences. This podcast will also include AMA or Ask Me Anything sessions, past Instagram live interviews with influencers, and other direct engagements with our tribe.
Hey, Jenny.
Hey there, Robert.
Can you hear me?
Everybody, I think people are trying to join us. Give them a few seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And
how's the background noise? I've got printers whirring behind me.
Actually, I think your headphone is perfect. It really cancels out a lot of those external noise, so it's good.
Cool.
But anyways, let's get started. So everybody, welcome. And remember to comment below. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and we'll try to incorporate them in our conversation. So our guest today is Robert. Oh my God, I actually learned how to. I actually learned. I googled how to pronounce last name. It's Italian. Let me try this. It's Pugliese.
Close. Good. It's pretty good. It's good.
Robert Pugliese.
There's no right way to say my name in English because it's an Italian state called Puglia. So okay. My name is Pugliese. But I tell everybody Pugliese.
Okay.
So Pugliese.
The way you pronounce
Pugliese,
it's so good. Beautiful. Actually, the way you pronounce it sounds like Italian.
Yeah, so everybody. I have to say Roberto Pugliese to say it right, but.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So our guest today, Robert, is the Director of Innovation Design at Thomas Jefferson University and Jefferson Health, where he co-founded Health Design Lab, which is also the handle for the Instagram account. And it is a creative space built with the purpose of merging together design studio ethos with science-oriented discipline to foster innovation in healthcare. And I love that description, by the way. I think that's really ideal for a lot of people in healthcare 3D printing.
Mm-hmm, totally.
So Robert, I guess now this design lab is your full-time job, but in your background, you didn't really grow up to wanting to do a design in healthcare. So tell us a little bit your early journey of how you got to where you are.
Yeah, totally. So I'm actually trained as a clinical pharmacist. So before getting into kind of full-time health innovation, I grew up in the emergency department. So I graduated pharmacy school and immediately was recruited to go work in emergency department at a children's hospital here in Philadelphia, and spent 10 years of my career kind of in the world of academic emergency medicine, very traditional kind of healthcare path, doing clinical research and focusing on emergency medicine pharmacology. And while it seems kind of random, I think that I ended up like taking this journey into innovation, and that's kind of where I discovered 3D printing and began my work in 3D printing. I think when people who've known me a really long time know that I've always been a tinkerer and somebody who likes to fix things. And, there's a lot of things that are broken in healthcare. And, when you're doing traditional healthcare work, whether you're a physician, nurse, pharmacist, or anybody for that matter, or a patient, there are a lot of kind of frustrating things on your day-to-day experiences, right? Working in healthcare. So I think I began to, be more and more drawn to innovation because I saw it as an outlet for a lot of my frustrations as to try to fix what's broken in healthcare. And
Okay, Robert, we lost you a couple. This is not good. Sorry, guys. This happens sometimes with Instagram connections. It's just.
Am I back? I'm back.
Yeah. You're back. Oh my God. Okay, you may
Tablet
have to
is
repeat. You may have.
timing out,
Oh, okay.
which is
That's
like
fine. We
super
can.
obnoxious, but it's
We
cool.
will edit that out. So maybe you should just start where we got left off, which
Yeah,
is
totally. So yeah, so I was talking
pharmacy
about, kind
part.
of my frustrations, right, with healthcare, how it led me to innovation. I kind of ended up, I was lucky enough to be in a place where I found other people who were like-minded to me and who had the same frustrations. And in emergency medicine is, I think, like really is a breeding ground for innovation because we are exposed to kind of so many of the woes of society meets the woes of the healthcare system. And it's, we're uniquely kind of positioned here. I've got a power cord now. I'm going to plug in so I don't lose you guys again.
By the way, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to type in the comment area. We're happy to address it during our conversation.
Yes. Give me 1 second while I rig up
And
something
also,
here.
technology failure is the common scenario in
Yeah,
our live
it's part of
sessions.
innovation is
Not a
addressing the
unique
failures in
experience.
technology. So now that I'm nice and in crooked, so yeah, so like those, those frustrations led me to find other people who had like-minded kind of frustrations, and we were able to create something really unique. And that became the Health Design Lab. It started as an educational program for medical students at our organization, and then grew to become something that kind of encompassed a lot of different realms, including, hey, I think I got it. A lot of different realms, including, it started with medical education, but then it expanded into kind of this space where we were in this world in the space between the world of health and design. And we realized that it wasn't just students who needed to learn this, but I think everybody in healthcare. And that's where we got started. And yeah, I could talk more about kind of where 3D printing came from and all this, but it starts making more sense as you go on.
Well, one question I always ask to a lot of guests is also I realized that a lot of people started to be interested in design and tinkering and all these like different ladder career trajectories at a very young age. Like we have people who are interested in, computer science or design or even 3D printing as a teenager. Like what was your early life experience that you think that kind of draw you to this field?
So it's funny, when I was really young, I wanted to become an inventor. I think I have this like weird booklet of sketches of different vehicles and buildings and like weird like public infrastructure things that I would create. I really wanted to, and I was always tinkering, building things that I really wanted to create, but I was discouraged when I realized that, kind of engineering is a really kind of math intensive field, and my brain just doesn't work too well with math. It was not my strong suit. So, over time, I kind of turned that into a biology focus. Biology came a lot more natural to me, and the pharmacy, despite being incredibly complex, was a lot easier than any kind of mathematics to me. So I put that aside, became a tinkerer, a fixer of humans, and then, but it was always there. Like I always found myself, like I always had some weird tinker lab in my basement, and I am so lucky. I consider myself lucky every day that I was able to kind of like, now I do that as my job, right? So now my job is I take all this experience, I have working in healthcare, and I'm able to bring what I think has always been a part of me, that kind of incessant curiosity for learning and problem solving, and apply that in a really broad sense, to the point now where, 3D printing is one of the core things that we do here in the lab. But, our work now expands to public health work. We're running community vaccination, so COVID vaccination and testing sites with the city of Philadelphia. Our educational mission continues on. And, we even do kind of, we run some medical device development programs here at Jefferson as well with students and professionals. So it's amazing, that I've been able to kind of touch all these different areas, and the thing that kind of, again, brings it all together, that's why we call it the Health Design Lab, is design, right? When I discovered design kind of by accident. It's not something that I had the language to understand as a healthcare, a healthcare provider. I knew what design was because we all experience it. And I think we all have our own definition of what design is. I didn't fully appreciate the impact and the power and the ubiquitousness of design in both our personal and professional lives until I began to learn the language of design and what it is. And then it kind of hit me, not suddenly, but quickly over time, is that a lot of these problems were the result of extremely poor design, right? Whether you're talking about the experience of patients and providers in the system, the devices and spaces that we exist in and use, all of those things were designed by somebody. And in healthcare, unfortunately, the bar is really low as far as the usability, how nice it is to use something, the pleasurability, the pleasurability of design, and the functionality of it. So, we really do approach design in health not just as like that traditional, it's got to work, but no, we want it to be a delightful and beautiful experience as well.
Yeah, no, I have so many questions to ask you. But you mentioned that you were a pharmacist before, and a large audience, a portion of our audience also are transitioning from hobbyists to maybe even more professional healthcare 3D printing designers. Like, how did you get started from as a pharmacist by training to now doing 3D printing extensively?
I was actually a big 3D printing doubter in the beginning. It's funny because, again, I think it comes from my first exposure to, this innovation in healthcare didn't come on the tech side. It was really did come through, I did learn through human-centered design, right? So I didn't start with I love technology and let me find places to use it. It really was I love finding human problems and let me find tools to solve them. So, when I first got I think our first 3D print work started about 6-ish years ago. And I looked at a 3D printer, I'm like, I don't understand what this is going to do for me, right? But we knew that there was value in it, right? So we started researching it, looking to see where in healthcare it was being used, and not so much taking this technology and trying to find places to use it, but looking for, who in our kind of organization and in our space could benefit and might be interested in this. And we kind of and a lot of what we do is that connecting the dots. So we did get a 3D printer. We learned how to use it. We started showing different folks in the organization it. And then quickly you start seeing the other innovators coming out of the woodworks, right? So the folks who are that surgeon who was I've heard about this. I've heard my colleagues are doing this and publishing on this. Can we do this here? And when I have an end user, right, come to me really excited about something, especially, a surgeon, I get excited too. I'm like, wait, you think there's something valuable here? Then we need to explore this, right? Because if an expert in their field sees value in something, and we have the ability to potentially help them, reach that, then let's check it out. So we kind of using our human-centered methodology, that's how we started it. It really was kind of that initial proof of concept. Let's see if we could print human anatomy, and going through the motions of how do you make that, how is it technologically feasible, and how do you get through it? And 6 years ago, it's crazy how fast, right, 3D printing technology has evolved in such a short period of time. 6 years ago, it was a totally different environment.
Oh,
and it
yeah,
was definitely it was definitely a lot more challenging and a lot more tinkering than now when stuff just works so well and it's so simple.
Well, simpler and better.
Simpler.
So a lot of times when I talk to people who now are working with 3D printing, sometimes they get a printer without requesting them. It sounds like that's your story. And there are other times they were trying to get one. Now, question is, a lot of organizations don't even know what 3D printing is still. I mean, how did you get your first printer? And what was it? Do you remember?
I do. Our first printer we purchased was a Ultimaker 2 Go. It was this little tiny, FDM QB printer that you could put in a backpack and take it around, because I really wanted to be able to take this thing around to different we were teaching classes at that time. We wanted to be able to bring it to classes. We were visiting different clinics and different, meeting spaces in the organization. So we wanted to be able to bring it with us. So that was my first kind of tinkering printer, and I learned how to 3D print at a local maker space. I just signed up for classes, and they taught me how to print on some pretty rudimentary open source printers. I still remember I laugh sometimes still because I remember I wanted to print a whole bunch of one thing, and this maker space had 5 or 6 3D printers that I could operate at one time. So nice. What I did was I brought one spool of material, because I just did the math, and I was like, yeah, each thing will be this much material. Let me just bring, all I need is one spool. I showed up with one spool of material trying to run 6 printers, and they looked at me like I was insane. They actually let me try it. It was not successful.
Oh, well, you were doing math. Hey, you're not really doing it.
I was my pharmacist brain, right, taking over. I'm like, all right, I need 650 grams. I just need one spool, whatever. So I was sitting there unspooling material. So a lot of trial and error, but that's how I learned. I really just learned by just trying things, and I quickly learned that the challenge is not the 3D printing, right? The challenge is the design. Yeah. It kind of that continues to be, I think, a true thread through all of our work, is that you can master the technology pretty quickly, but solving an actual need requires kind of constant iteration, prototyping, and effort and collaboration.
Yeah, I think one of the guys just mentioned that 3D printing, the machine, the hardware part is just like a shovel, right? The question is, how are you going to dig that hole and where, and all the strategies surrounding digging a hole in the ground. Obviously, that's a very rudimentary comparison. But I know that you brought us some very cool clinical cases, and since this is Instagram Live, I wonder if you can show us some of those cases.
Totally. So I've got my show and tell table all set up. I don't want to let's see if I'll be able to get this. Well, first I'll show you around my lab. So this is the health design lab. It's we've got nice. 4 Ultimaker S5s, and then 4 Form Labs 3s and 3Bs.
Yeah.
Those are kind of our workhorses. So we started with not open source, but we started with prosumer grade devices, and we've continued to utilize prosumer grade devices because one of the things that we've always wanted to approach this work from is a concept of sustainability. So actually, let me just flip you around. It's even easier.
What's a prosumer? That's a new term that you're coining.
Oh no, totally. I did not make that up. I will not take credit for that. So prosumer is if you think about a consumer grade device, right? Like a standard inkjet printer, right? A consumer grade device, generally you open up the box, you read the instructions, and it works. Mm-hmm. A prosumer grade device is almost there. You like how I 3D printed that too? No, just kidding. A prosumer grade device, right, is still accessible to your average computer, right? To your average individual. You don't need to be, let's say, an engineer or have professional level training to be able to utilize it. But it's not like your average person would need to work a little bit harder, and there's a little bit of that tinkering factor in order for you to have 3D printing success. So we call them prosumer grade devices, right? Because these are not industrial grade machines per se, but they do offer a high level of precision and control. And now, even with the advances recently, even FDA approved workflows, which is a nice, valuable have when you're doing work in healthcare. But we took that route really because, again, we're always thinking about sustainability. Can we sustain, how do you sustain a practice like this in healthcare, which is, very much focused on outcomes, and the payer system is very complex, and being able to utilize technology that's really quite affordable, I think was always an important strategy for us.
So you guys
let's talk about,
you guys don't
sorry,
have
go ahead.
large polyjet or something more heavier. Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it's a very low cost. I mean, yes, they are. I mean, these machines are not super cheap, but they're really affordable as an organization, and also very easy to operate. You don't really need complex management, like metal printer would have to require.
Right,
So
and it kind of brings you to how we got started, right? We didn't get started with a large budget. We got started with a group of people who were just interested in it. And that group that's continued to kind of sustain our work has been medical students. So because we run most of our faculty are in based out of the medical school, we run medical school programs. There's a lot of interest, especially from medical students who are interested in becoming radiologists, to do this work. And there's a lot of opportunity for research as well. So we're able to, kind of very easily train, medical students to be able to not just do the segmentation, in partnership with radiology, but also to run the equipment. Again, and that training is very minimal to do it well.
yeah, I mean, the overall design concept, actually, you can't really ignore the fact that at the end of the day, you still have to get it through a printer, and materials, all these other things also matter, in terms of design consideration. So I saw quite a few examples on your table when you were scanning through, and all of them look weird. I don't know what they are. Can you just show us, maybe tell us what these are used for?
So I was showing you on one of the printers right now we have running, I'm reprinting a brain model that we recently did. That was for a case, if you want to look it up, it's called the Cortico trial here at Jefferson.
Yeah, I'll include the link.
Yep, I sent you the link. It had a good amount of stuff in the news about it. It was pretty cool. Our neurosurgeons, led by Dr. Rosenwasser here at Jefferson, implanted a brain-machine interface on one of our patients who was recovering from a stroke. And what they did was they implanted electrodes in that individual's brain in order to control a mechanized arm that he would control using that interface. And because, again, like people know about us and they know we're here, this is obviously not something that we're doing on a regular basis, as it's a very, new procedure for our organization. One of the neurosurgeons who was familiar with our work, reached out. We were able to 3D print a model of that particular patient's brain, using an MRI scan. And they were able to use that model to plan and practice where they were going to place their electrodes. I sent you that link, which has a really cool picture of like the little like mini tape practice electrodes that they put on the cortical surface of the brain, and we have a lot of use cases like that where really it's not technically advanced, right? It didn't require, super advanced workflow, multi-materials, really advanced technologies, right? Creating a model of the brain using segmentation software is relatively straightforward if you know the workflow. And 3D printing a brain that is literally all you care about is the cortical surface is also really straightforward. The cool thing, like the innovation there, is just that connection, right? The fact that, these docs just needed to practice where they were physically placing these very small and very precise things, and having a 3D print was the perfect tool.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
Yeah, it may look low tech to some people, but it actually is, I would consider high tech because, in the past, if you want to have a model that looks like a brain, it costs thousands of dollars using injection mold process. But now you can do it in your office for, at max $100, right? Materials and times and stuff like that considered, or something like that. So yeah, no, I think actually it is beneficial. And the other question I have is, I think you mentioned that the doctors want to practice. How much more value do you think the 3D printed model add to like 3D reconstructed images on a monitor, for example? Like virtual.
I think that's a great point of discussion, and I think that's why I still always lean on the design process, because the 3D model the physical 3D model may not always be necessary. And I think that's part of the design process that we go through, right? Anytime a surgeon or a physician comes to us with a project, we sit down and we say, what are your goals? What do you need to do? And then what tools can we help you with in order to achieve those goals? And sometimes, a lot of times, right, it is a physical model, because there is something really important about that kind of three-dimensional tactile feel, right?
Yeah.
So there's something about, being able to hold a model that it's the one-to-one dimension that you'll experience with your patient. And surgeons really are, right? They really do work in three-dimensional space, whereas radiologists are masters of like radiologists are just masters of being able to translate what is two-dimensional into a three-dimensional understanding of pathology and human anatomy. Your average person just simply doesn't do that quickly. So, for folks who are kind of three-dimensional thinkers, being able to have that tactile experience really does create a different, level of understanding for somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I've been practicing radiology for almost a decade, more than a decade, probably, if you consider residency.
Mm-hmm.
And there is absolutely a disconnect between imaging and surgery. And I still am unable to actually make that connection oftentimes. Part of it is because surgeons are the real people who actually go into the field and touch and cut and maneuver with, pool of blood oftentimes. So, I mean, thinking back in the days when we don't have 3D printing, it's kind of scary. Like, no one is practicing really outside of the patient. Everybody was practicing on the patient basically first time they open it up. It's like, whoa, what a surprise. Like, do you really want that?
Yeah. And then, I think there's a lot in the research I'm happy to see the body of research growing, right, that shows the value of 3D models in surgical planning. But I think another area which is often overlooked is in another kind of area, and that is patient education, right, which is like a term that you see used a lot now as an enhanced consent. Because if it's hard for us folks who are in healthcare and understand like human anatomy to look at a CAT scan, right, or look at an X-ray or look at an MRI and be like, and understand what I'm looking at, to imagine that your average patient, when they're in their kind of pre-operative visit and somebody's pointing at a screen of some, blurry black and white objects that they know what the heck you're pointing at, while they nod their head yes in agreement, right? Like having new tools to enable that education to be more effective. Again, thinking about that human-centered approach. If you were that patient sitting in that chair, you have no idea what's about to happen to you. You have a million questions, but don't know how to begin to answer them. Having a tool, right, like this, that looks like a big blob.
Tell people what this is. I kind of know what it is, but
so this is a liver, right? This is a scale liver model that we did a small study on looking at patients who are going to undergo partial liver resections with one of our liver surgeons here.
Mm-hmm.
And,
and what is the orange stuff and what is the blue stuff and the red stuff?
Yeah, totally. So here you have, right, your two major vessels. So you have your vein, artery, and then you can see kind of the red and blue are the major kind of vessels going through the liver, just the major branches. And that little orange blob that's kind of floating in there is tumor, right? Yeah. And this particular tumor is sitting right on the end of a major kind of arterial vessel. You can kind of see it there. And again, what was fascinating about this, and here you get a really good, just this process, I remember talking to the surgeon, this is a very experienced surgeon with a ton of experience doing this. And frequently we hear that, we hear from very experienced physicians that, I've been doing this a long time, I know how to do it.
Right.
But then they get a new tool in their hand and they're like, oh, wait, this actually gives me new information that I didn't have before. So sometimes like even just being able to manipulate something and you can see like suddenly now from this angle, you see that there's a space there between that artery and that vein, where when you're looking at it like this, right, it was like right on top of each other. So
yeah, and that artery is leading to that tumor.
It is. Yep, certainly. So not only was this valuable though for to help that surgeon practice and pre-plan, but we would show the patient, right? We would show the patient this model beforehand, explain what the procedure was. In resection cases, there's a lot of discussion around, how much of the organ can be salvaged, it can remain, right? And it's really reassuring to patients. Time and time again, we hear that it's not scary, right? More information is not scary. And this is an assumption that people in healthcare have been making for a very long time. The idea that, if you give your patient more information, it's a bad thing. Well, inevitably, time and time again, we see with these types of models that it's not seen as a bad thing. More information is valuable. It enables somebody to understand the procedure, ask better questions, right? Be more confident with their decision-making about the procedure that they're about to undergo. And it's amazing. It's actually really amazing to see how happy folks are when you go the extra mile, right? When you show them that we're really like using every tool at our disposal to make sure that, you know, their care goes as well as it can be.
Yeah, it definitely feels like an extra step that you made for the patient. I mean, a lot of times, like from me as radiology, it's not like I don't want to share information. It's really I don't know how to,
Mm-hmm.
because one sentence will lead to like 100 other questions. Like I don't even know where to begin because we weren't really trained to communicate with patients as a radiology. Like we're trained to talk to doctors with like Latin. Um, so I think these kind of models definitely would really help bridge that gap of communication.
Yeah.
So we're approaching the end of our interview. I want to hear what is your short and long-term goals? What are some of the challenges you want to conquer? What is your vision? Like a final statements kind of.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's amazing work being done all over the country, all over the world in this space. And there are some great organizations, right? Like groups like yours who are trying to bring people together, educate folks. Groups like RSNA, right? The Radiological Society of North America, the 3D SIG group there is doing really important work from the, you know, academic side and making sure
Yeah.
that we're creating support for these services to be available.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we really are still in the beginning stages where you just have a lot of people who are stranded on these islands who are trying to figure out either you started a small service and you're trying to figure out how to grow it, how to make it sustainable. You want to bring this into your practice, right? Whether you're coming from radiology or coming from surgery, there's a lot of opportunity in the therapies, right? And occupational and physical therapies for these types of tools to be utilized. And all these people are just basically trying to figure it out on their own. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, you know, again, like the groups I mentioned, to bring folks together, to provide tools to so that they can, you know, do this work quicker and better and not have to create everything from scratch and build upon that of others. But then also there needs to be some training. You know, one of the things that I feel really proud about our group is that yes, we are providing a service at our organization, but we're also teaching a lot of folks, right? Every medical student who's coming through our program is learning about, you know, advanced imaging techniques and technologies. They're learning about 3D printing. They're learning about human-centered design to the point where we even have fellows now. So we're in our 4th year of our fellowship. Medical students, usually they're interested in surgery or radiology, will take a whole year off to spend with us just to do research in this arena. And so it's really amazing that we're kind of creating these new experts, right? These physicians of the future who are going to go to wherever they go, having this knowledge and skill in their back pocket, right? So they can begin to grow this work elsewhere. Because I think that kind of building that ecosystem of education is also a really important part of this.
Is there any way that an outside non-medical student can access to these educational resources? Because, like, for example, people like me would love to see what you're teaching and learn.
Yeah, you know, and we collaborate with a lot of other groups. You know, I work with a local engineering program. They have a really great, you know, there's all these teachers are doing really amazing things. I work with a local engineering program that is teaching segmentation to biomedical engineers, right, and talking about 3D printing in healthcare. And then you have OT programs that are teaching it. And then you have medical programs that are teaching it too. So, you know, we have a very open policy. We're always willing to share kind of how we do things and our approaches. But at the end of the day, there does have to be investment, right? There does need to be an investment on the part of the organization and the school to say, I want my students to be able to learn this, right? And that's why, you know, we do a lot of work with the medical school, because the medical school, you know, a number of years ago decided that they wanted to invest in students who understood things like design and human-centeredness, right? And these programs were grown from that investment.
So currently these are available for medical students who, I'm assuming, don't pay to learn from you.
Correct. It's part of their curriculum and part of their extracurricular kind of opportunity. But we also take a lot of interns, right? Like, if it wasn't for COVID times, we used to take interns from schools all over the country. We've had to scale a lot of that down because of COVID and just the complexities around it. But you know, I've got 4 medical student interns and we've got a couple interns who are going to be working with us on bioprinting. We've got a bioprinting space here in the lab as well. So, those are always places for folks who are really interested to learn.
What is that?
All right. Bonus
It's a
points,
finale.
Jenny.
What?
What do you think? This is the finale.
Okay,
Do you know what this is? If I hold it upside down, do you
Okay.
understand? Do you know what it is better?
Oh my God. First of all, there is a lot of things blocking. It's got to be some kind of tumor on top of. No, is that a brain?
This comes off. Nope, not a brain. It's very large, right? What could be this big? Here's a cross section.
Is this a uterus? No.
Oh, you're close. Yep, that's it. You got it. It is a uterus. Can you name that pathology?
Previa?
You got it. I think this is where my understanding falls apart. It's either percreta or I think it's percreta, placenta percreta.
I can't believe you guys printed out a giant uterus. I mean, that's like.
So we do a lot.
What's the red and the blue part? It's just veins and placenta veins and artery?
You got it. So you have placenta, right, that's gone through the myometrium. This is a tremendous vascular bundle.
Yeah.
And this is actually bladder that's sitting kind of sandwiched right below that vascular bundle.
Okay.
So we've got a really fantastic high-risk obstetric service at one of our hospitals, at Abington Hospital.
Yeah.
And they came to us again, like we do these really great, this is kind of one of my funky, busted old models because the original model of this is literally in a museum now.
Is that a uterus with fibroids?
You got it. Yep, this is a leiomyomatous uterus model. This patient was, I believe, about 30 weeks or 25 to 30 weeks.
Is that one to one size? That's giant.
Yeah, correct. It is 1-to-1 size.
That is crazy. Wow.
Right, so you can see all the fibroids penetrating, how they go through. Here's the placenta here. Yeah. And again, this really is used as a communication tool because in these cases they have like it amazed me. They have like 6 different specialties in the room, right? You have vascular, urology, the obstetric surgeons, anesthesia, you name it. Like there's all these groups and they all have to plan these procedures from the day this woman is diagnosed, right, with a complex pregnancy. They start planning. And they follow her throughout. So they need to be ready to go at a moment's notice. And they use this as their map, right? Their map to help guide them when they're discussing their planning, thinking about what their surgical approach is going to be, and getting everybody on the same page.
Yeah, fascinating. It used to be a group of people looking at x-rays, and now they're looking at
they're looking at x-rays, CAT scans, MRIs, and 3D prints.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Robert, for your session today. I know you're extremely busy with your work and life. So thank you so much for spending time with me and everybody here. And I will catch up soon.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. You can go out with a 3D printed brain.
Okay.
Just play some music.
Da, 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 da. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. And we will process this to make it a podcast and on YouTube, so stay tuned. Okay, bye-bye. That's it for this episode. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 3D Heals, and check out the links in the show notes. See you next time.